So I've had my 2023 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392 for about 3 months, and I've put about 2,300 miles on this thing. Now those miles have been city, highway, and off-road. So I wanted to go ahead and give you guys a city driving review of my Wrangler 392. So obviously, best part about this entire Jeep is this sound right here. Literally will never get old, and I really am glad that Jeep has continued the V8 392 in their 2024 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. At least that's the rumor right now. We'll see if they actually produce those. Got some nice burbles there as well, which of course, who doesn't like those? And best part about that is you can hit this button right here and it goes quiet. So always got to keep that on though. 2,429 miles on this Jeep, and I have encountered many different types of scenarios with this Jeep, which of course I wanted to go over with you guys in this video. So obviously, number one thing is you can drive this Jeep anywhere you want. Now, we have a huge speed bump coming up right here. I'll show you how easy it is. Obviously, that's nothing for this Jeep. Now, if you guys have been following along with the channel for a few years now, then you know that I did used to have a Dodge Challenger ScatPack, which got stolen, got it back, sold it, and got this 392 to replace my Challenger. And do I actually regret my decision? And the answer is 100% I do not. This thing is a whole lot more enjoyable. It's a whole lot more practical, even though, you know, I hate using the excuse that a vehicle is not practical. But, you know, this type of Jeep is for sure practical. Now, of course, it's not practical if you're looking at it from an economical standpoint, because, you know, it's a V8 Wrangler. It weighs about 5,100 pounds, so of course it doesn't get the best fuel economy. So got a nice turn coming up here. It's pretty tight, and we actually did not even hit the curb. So that one actually surprised me there as well, because as you guys know, this is a 4-door, it's an unlimited. So the 392s only come in the 4-door model, so there's no 2-door option. With 470 horsepower, you got to be careful with, you know, weight distribution and center of gravity with a Jeep that's already very easily flippable. So we got a nice turn coming up here as well. Now this turn here is actually banked the opposite way that you want it, but we're going around, you know, almost 40 miles an hour and not having any handling issues with this turn right here. Going back to the whole Challenger comparison that I started to talk about, with that car, I had to be careful everywhere that I was driving for speed bumps or pretty much anything else, because that thing was super low, and I also had long tube headers, which stuck down even lower than the stock headers. So of course, if I was going over any speed bump, I was pretty much guaranteed to scrape on the speed bump. And obviously with a Wrangler of this type of ground clearance, and of course with a factory lift kit, and I believe the number is 3.5 inches higher than a base Wrangler Sport. So if you consider the suspension lift with the Extreme Recon package, plus the extra height that the 35-inch tires give you, then I believe it is 3.5 inches higher than a base Wrangler. Now, even with a base Wrangler, those things don't have any issues with ground clearance with speed bumps and like normal road driving. So we'll get a nice light acceleration here. Obviously nothing too crazy since we are on public roads and not Mexico, but let's just give it a little bit right here. So that was probably 30% throttle, maybe 20-30%. And I got up to the speed limit with 0 effort, and I could feel it instantly. Like, it has instant power to give you. Now, one thing that I will also say about the acceleration is that when you are accelerating pretty, you know, spiritedly or enthusiastically, then you will notice that the Jeep kind of turns to one side and it kind of wants to like float across the lane. So that's definitely one thing you have to account for when driving one of these huge Wranglers that has a whole bunch of power. So, you know, once you get used to it, obviously it's not an issue. You just have to make up for it and make sure that you are aware of what's going on and what the Jeep wants to naturally do. Because it is such a big vehicle, it's not completely planted to the ground like a Challenger or any kind of sports car that's meant to do that kind of stuff would be. Then, you know, it doesn't behave like a Challenger or Charger or a GTR or any kind of sports car that's meant for handling purposes. I will say, this Jeep Wrangler is not made to handle twisty roads or any kind of turns on any kind of like, you know, the tail of the dragon or Skyline drive or anything like that. But I will say, for a Jeep that's meant for off-roading, it definitely does do extremely well with actual on-road handling. Now, I have taken this Jeep on a twisty road and, you know, just to test out the handling, and I did a video on that as well if you guys are interested in checking that out. And it was a whole bunch of fun driving that thing on a twisty road and just pushing it to its on-road limits. You can have fun with this thing on-road and, of course, off-road. Off-road is obviously where this thing would shine because it does have front and rear locking differentials, which of course is great for, you know, getting out of those tricky situations where one side has traction. You also do have a sway bar disconnect right here in the bottom. You just hit that button and you can electronically disconnect the sway bars for more articulation. And then of course you also do have full-time four-wheel drive, which is just 4-high auto. So it's pretty much four-wheel drive all the time. There's no two-wheel drive option. And then of course you do have 4-high part-time, which you would switch into that whenever you actually want it to be, you know, a 50-50 split between the front and the rear. And then of course you do have 4-low as well for low range crawling and any kind of off-road situations that require lower speeds. It also does have hill descent control with increments of, I believe, 0.6 miles per hour, and you just adjust the speed with the paddle shifters, which is a very neat feature for, you know, crawling down a steep hill, for example. So, you know, all of that to say that this thing is definitely purposely built for off-roading and not on-road handling. Give you some nice downshifts here as well. So of course, once again, that was like 20% throttle, if that. It's always good to hear that V8 392, and of course it's great to also enjoy that V8 while we still can, while they're still legal and still being produced. So as for comfort, when it comes to the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392, it definitely does have a much better suspension, upgraded from the JK of course, and of course the base JLs as well. So it soaks up the bumps a whole lot better than the JK, and I do have experience driving a JK Rubicon Hard Rock, and comparing it to that thing, it definitely feels a whole lot smoother, and you know, it just soaks up the bumps a whole lot easier. It kind of feels like you're driving on a cloud. This thing comes stock from the factory with beadlock capable wheels, and of course you guys probably saw the sidewall of the tires. It's huge. It comes stock with 315 tires, with 35 inches in diameter and 315 millimeters in width. You know, that's pretty much the size of the rear tire on a Hellcat wide body, I believe. So this thing definitely gets off the line very quickly, very easily, and of course with that full-time four-wheel drive, that just helps it that much more. Now, I haven't actually gotten the chance to race anybody with my 392, but I definitely am looking forward to when that time actually comes, because I'm very excited to see how this thing actually stacks up with different types of cars. And when it comes to the safety of the 392 Wrangler, as you guys know, Wranglers are very good about blind spots, because you can just look back there and you can see your blind spot very clearly. Look back here, you can also see your blind spot. And the 392 trim of the Wrangler also comes with blind spot monitors, completely stock and completely standard, so it's not like an additional option. Another benefit of the 392 is the 392, because if you have more acceleration power, that means if you need to actually accelerate to avoid an accident, you can do that and be a lot more confident, and you know, just be a lot safer if you have the ability to accelerate quicker. And that goes the same for braking ability as well. If you have this much power and this much weight in a vehicle, 5,100 pounds, 470 horsepower, you definitely do want to be able to stop all of that weight and all of that power and all that speed. So, you know, comparing it once again to the JK Wrangler, the brakes on this thing are night and day difference. Comparing it to the Challenger, they're not as good, but of course that's to be expected. This thing weighs a whole lot more, and it's not meant for performance like that. And even though it's not meant to have that kind of performance, it still does. It still performs great. So just another example, if you're driving through a work zone or a construction site, for example, where they have huge potholes and like uneven roads or steel plates covering up a bunch of holes or whatever, then with a Challenger, I had to always slow down and go very slow over all those steel plates, potholes, and any kind of, you know, uneven road surfaces. And of course, as you guys know, a lot of people on the road are very impatient, and a lot of people get road rage. So you can imagine what kind of stuff happened when I slowed down for a steel plate in the road. Now, luckily with the Jeep Wrangler, I don't have to slow down for pretty much anything. I can take any bump, any speed bump, any pothole, and it really doesn't matter. I could drive over this curb if I wanted to. If I accidentally hit a curb, it really doesn't matter. If I accidentally hit a curb with the Challenger, I would tear off the front splitter, curb the wheels, pop the tire, you know, bend the headers, anything like that. So with the Jeep Wrangler, I definitely do have a whole lot more freedom with where I can drive, what I can do, and I'm not always paranoid about going somewhere where I'm not actually going to be able to drive. For example, a gravel road, something as simple as that, I would be paranoid and I would not want to drive my Challenger on a gravel road. With the Wrangler, I have no issues. It's just a regular road to me. I can go anywhere I want to. Now, one more comparison when it comes to the Challenger is that the Challenger attracted a lot more unwanted attention than the Jeep. Of course, cops are always looking at the Challengers, especially if it's bright red and super loud. So of course, with the Jeep, I don't really feel like I'm targeted by the police anymore, which is great because, you know, I still have the same 392. I can still have a whole bunch of fun on the road, but I don't have to be super worried about always being targeted. So as you guys can probably tell, I definitely do not regret buying a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392. And, you know, in the city, it's great. On the highway, it's great. Off-roading, obviously, it's great as well. Wow, that thing's fast. So I really do believe that the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392 is in fact one of the best vehicles you can buy that's out there right now. You get the best of both worlds. It has a nice 392 V8, and of course it's super off-road capable. So, you know, the two things that I love, Jeeps and speed, that's what I got right here. So best of both worlds. And, you know, if you're on the fence of buying a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392, I would definitely highly recommend it. So as you guys can probably tell, I definitely am a huge fan of my 2023 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392, and I for sure do not regret selling my Challenger ScatPack for a 392 Wrangler. And of course, as always, if you guys have any kind of questions about my experience so far with my 392, definitely feel free to drop those down in the comment section below, and I'll get back with any kind of questions that you guys have. And of course, thanks for watching.